Happy Friday, Brewers fans. It's Friday. It is the best day of the week, and it is back. This day, it makes this day even better. Another show with two more Brewers fans, probably just like yourself. We get to meet Nick and Cody next. Stay tuned in. You are Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Brewers fans, welcome back into the Locked On Brewers podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Brewers your first listen each and every day. Do not forget, we are free and available on all podcast platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify. I could go on and on, but you're already sick of hearing me, so we'll stop there. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Brewers. You can subscribe to the channel over there on YouTube at Locked On Brewers. So very close to 1,000. Help us get there. Just search at Locked On Brewers. And we are now on Facebook. I have ventured into the Facebook groups of the Brewers fans, which may not be good for my health, but we're over there on the Facebook. Check us out at Locked On Brewers Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Snide. I tell you guys, I'm a fan with a mic in front of my face, a lifelong and diehard Milwaukee Brewers fan, actually recording this podcast minutes away from American Family Field. They actually had the roof open at American Family Field. Well, I guess it's kind of warm. So whatever. It just kind of caught me off guard there in January. You can find me on Twitter at Brandon_Snide. As always, I really, really appreciate you guys allowing me to steal some of your time to talk about our Milwaukee Brewers. As always, Locked On Brewers is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. You know, I've often said this on this show, and you guys are probably rolling your eyes at me when I say it and maybe, brushing it off, but the fans are part of the show. They are as much of this show as I am of this show. Without them, I am not here, and we are all Brewers fans. So joining me today for the second edition of the Fan Feature Friday, I am happily joined by two more Brewers fans, Nick and Cody. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Pretty darn good.
Doing great.
It is, I tell people I was sitting in my basement, which sounds weird, like, sitting in my basement, but I really was. I was sitting in my basement, and I just was thinking of ways to spruce up the show a little bit. It's the off season for baseball, and you guys know this. Anybody listening to this podcast, anybody a fan of any sport in the off season, eventually things stop. We've seen that with the Milwaukee Brewers. They signed Wade Miley about a week ago, roughly. So that was the latest news, and they've been pretty active, but I wanted to find ways to get the fans, incorporated into the show, let the fans have a voice. The first week went really good. I had mostly good comments, a few not so nice. That's okay. We just let it go. We move on, but overall it was pretty good. And so I'll start, Cody, with you. You are located where exactly?
I'm located like central Minnesota. I'm south of the city, is about a half hour. Originally from Wisconsin. Moved over here about 5 years ago. And
if you don't, we're not going to get too personal. I'm curious, why was it a professional move, or you got family out there, or what caused you to go? I got family out in Minnesota. He wants me to come visit him, and I still haven't done that yet. So I haven't gone over to that side of the of the area yet. But was it a personal move? What caused you to move out there?
Yeah, my wife and I actually she's originally from here, so I kind of just packed up and moved over here.
Cool. Nick, what about you?
I'm from Milwaukee. I moved to Greenfield about 3 years ago, and I've been living with my brother ever since.
I love the Myers in Greenfield. I like that area. I drive bikes. I hope I drive bikes. I ride motorcycles, and I frequent the House of Harley there on 60th in Layton quite a bit, which isn't good for my bank account. But anyway, we'll digress. If you guys want to hear about what I do with my bank account, Cody, I'll start with you. How did you get into baseball? Have you always been a Brewers fan? How did it all start for you?
Yeah, ever since I was a kid, I've been always playing baseball. I grew up watching the Crew. I always went to games when I was back home. Me and my father always went to games here and there. We tried to get one or two a year if we could. Now living in Minnesota, I try to get back. I've been back to, I still call it Miller Park. I can't get over the American Family Field. but I've been back probably 2 years ago was the last time I've been there.
Okay.
So
right before COVID, then it sounds
yeah,
like, right?
yep, right before
okay.
COVID.
All right, cool. Nick, what about you? I mean, if you're from Milwaukee, if you're like me and you're like Cody, it's always been, Brewers have always been at the forefront. If you're in the area, for me, it was the first true sport that I grew up playing and enjoying, even though we sucked in the 90s. It was still, we were force fed Brewers baseball. So how about you? Have you always been a Brewers fan?
I went to games as a kid with my dad during the summer, and honestly, I wasn't a fan until like 2008. But that was a pretty good
so you
year
waited
to
till they
kinda
were
jump
good,
in and
Nick. You
start.
waited till they were good.
Yeah, because I never got one. My dad would always turn on the games when I was a kid. I was like, finally, I just got tired of having to leave the room all the time, and then now you can say I'm probably a bigger fan than he is now.
So let me ask you this, Nick. You're in the Greenfield area. You're not far from American Family Field. You're hop, skip, and a jump
Right.
away. How many do you go to games in the course of a season? Now, obviously, they're back open. Parks are. 2020 was kind of weird. When they opened 2021, it was still like 50% capacity. We've obviously moved well past that. So, do you go to games throughout the course of the year?
Yeah, I usually try to make it to weekend games, especially if there's another good team coming into town like the Dodgers or the Cubs. But yeah, I try to go to at least 2 or 3 a year.
Are you like me too, where like in the summer, in the spring too, like it doesn't need to be your full focus, but Bally Sports Wisconsin or maybe Bob Euchre on the radio, it has to be on. You have to have a Brewer game on, even if you're not really watching it. For me, I can have it on in the background and I can like be doing 100 other things, but it's one of those things where you just got to stop. You do the full dad thing. For me, it's put my hands on my hips and I watch the score or I watch the game on the TV, but it's always on the TV in the summer.
Yeah, I'll always be listening to it if they're playing a day game when I'm getting home from work. I'll always have the radio on, or
okay.
The rare occasion they're actually on Fox, I'll be watching them on there, or I'll be following along on my phone days I can't see them.
So let me ask you, Cody. You aren't as blessed. Well, you are blessed. I shouldn't say that, but we live in the Milwaukee area, so we're spoiled. We get to see all the games on Bally Sport. We could go to the gate at 10 minutes for the game and get a $6 ticket if we probably wanted to. You're in Minnesota. Things are a little bit different from you. You obviously can't watch. Maybe you don't have the Bally Sports Wisconsin. I've heard awful things about the app, so I'm not here to bash it or anything. I know nothing about it. I get to watch it on my television. The Brewers only come to Minnesota, very, very, very little throughout the course of a season. So how do you take in your Brewers games, Cody? I'm curious.
I just buy the out of market for the year and I watch it. We just put a huge patio in and I got TV outside. So when the crew's on, I'm outside watching the game the whole time. But when they're in town, I usually get together either with my neighbor or some friends, and we always hit up the game. And I'm representing the crew all the time and get those mean looks from the other fans. But hey, you gotta stick with the team.
See, Minnesota's kind of like that weird. They're kind of a weird city. So like Chicago, like if you guys are like me, I hate everything about Chicago: the city, the parking, the driving, the construction, the prices, the Cubs, the Bulls. I'm missing somebody else, the Bears, of course. So like Minnesota's weird though, because like we don't like the Vikings. I'm a Packer fan, but like you don't really care about the Twins. You don't really care about the Timberwolves. So it's kind of that weird, in between. Do Minnesota fans, Twins fans act? What do they feel towards Brewers?
I don't know. Last time we went to a game, it was kind of like I was the only Brewer fan in our area. And we went with my neighbors and I'm sitting there cheering on because we won. But I'm sitting there cheering on. Everybody's kind of like, just like we're all joking around, booing me and like jokingly. So it was like, it was cool. So it was kind of nice to be in a rival stadium and be that opposite fan versus always being at home field. But yeah, it was, usually they're pretty nice, but it was a cool moment.
And it's a newer one too. It's my uncle. He swears by it. He lives in the Minneapolis area. He says it's beautiful. I refuse to believe him and won't waste my time going. But
yeah,
I'll digress on that. But I'll shoot it over back to you, Nick. I'm curious. You became a fan in 2008. So before we transition to our next topic, I'm curious. In 2008, who was your favorite Milwaukee Brewer player?
Probably Corey Hart among all the different guys that were on the team. He's just kind of the guy that seemed like the best, like a team player or kind of a quiet leader on the field, even though he was young back then.
He was.
I always was a Corey Hart fan.
Corey Hart was, I remember Corey Hart, the JJ Hardy, Ricky Weeks, Prince Fielder, Ryan Braun, they all kind of came up together. And man, I had high expectations then. I was in high school at that moment, but I also have high expectations for this current group and Terrain and Mitchell, Churio coming up, guys that are currently coming up. It has that feel to be a deep class, kind of like what we had with Corey Hart that you were talking about. Cody, I'll shoot it back over to you. Growing up, I don't want you don't have to tell me how old you are. If you're ashamed to tell me how old you are, some people get sensitive about it, but I'm just curious, who was your favorite player growing up?
So I'm 28. My favorite player growing up was always like Ricky Weeks.
Okay.
I was a big fan of him. It seemed like every time we're at the game, he was always on the field, bringing energy to the fans. And like now when I play softball and everything, I wear the number 23 and it was like, oh, Michael Jordan. I'm like, no, Ricky Weeks. It's all Ricky Weeks.
That's incredible. I'm actually working on getting a date with Ricky Weeks to get him on to this podcast. So that'd be cool to get him on. Yeah, he was another one that was just lunched in with the JJ Hardys and the Fielders and the Brauns, and that was such a fun group to watch and really grow up with the Milwaukee Brewers, because they were the best team that we eventually had here up until recently. So, well, you guys have kind of given me a little bit about an insight of what you had growing up, how you became Brewer fans, how you take in the Brewer games. And one of my favorite parts of the early Fan Feature Fridays is really just getting to know you guys. And I know it's a cliche thing to say, but it means a lot to have fans on this show, because without you guys, there is no Locked On Brewers. I need you guys in order for this podcast to operate and be successful. And you guys really are the driving force behind this. And it's really cool to just sit back and understand how much we all really have in common. If you're in Minnesota, or if you're in North Carolina, like Levi was last week, or if you're down the street, probably literally like Nick and I in Greenfield in Milwaukee, we all have the same thing in common. And speaking of good things in common, we all want good tasting food. I'm assuming that's at least accurate. I mean, if you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. Just got through the holidays, getting back in the gym routine, getting back being active, getting off the couch. College football's done. The NFL playoffs are kicking off and college basketball's right down the corner, but you got to get off the couch. And I know for me, my goal was to eat a little healthier this year. And if you're like me and you want to eat healthier, but you don't want to compromise the taste, then I got the thing just for you. You got to try a Built Bar. Built Healthy is actually tasty. I'm dead serious. They're the most delicious protein bar I've ever had. They're perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes them so good, you may ask? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, 100% real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm honestly not sure how they do it. They landed on my doorstep. I opened them, had a few bites, thought it was a candy bar. They are incredible, and they maintain the macros, which is the best part. And what's even better is overall, they're just a healthy snack. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, they've been talking about ordering your Built Bars on BuiltBars.com. You do not need to do that anymore. You can go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club. Everybody has a Walmart by them. Check it out. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk up to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a four-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. And if you live close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our favorite flavors, brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. Thank you for making Locked On Brewers your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he is going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Welcoming in Nick and Cody to the second ever Fan Feature Friday, the second of many Fan Feature Fridays. We got to know them a little bit, got to know what some of their early memories are, how they watch Brewer games, who their favorite player may have been, in going over what it was like growing up in Milwaukee and in Wisconsin. But I'm curious, and we'll start with Nick. We're gonna have some fun in this segment, because Friday is fun, and fun is Friday, Nick. And we're going to make you the general manager for the Milwaukee Brewers. Okay, you are the general manager. You are the president of baseball operations. You take over for Matt Arnold, just like Matt Arnold took over for David Stearns not too long ago. And you, my friend, get 3 items on your list that you can complete as the president of baseball operations. Nick, what are you doing to make the Brewers a better team?
The first thing I'm going to do is agree with you on some of the previous shows. I'm going to pay Corbin Burns and lock him in long term.
Most people don't.
And then I'm going to
thank you.
Probably extend Woodruff and Adames as well. I don't know if those are 3 separate things, but those
we'll
are
give
all
you 2. I'll give you. You know what? I'll be generous. So you're generous. I'm going to be generous too, Nick. That's your you get 1. So Woodruff, Burns, and Adames are your first. So you get 2 more.
Okay. I'm probably going to fix the leak in the roof at Miller Park because it does. I've seen it leak before.
It does.
I was there with my dad one time, and we couldn't believe it. And the other thing was probably just stay competitive with the other big market teams. Don't be afraid to spend money when they seem to have been in the past.
I can respect all 3 of those, especially the first one. I am a big pay Corbin Burns fan. I just don't think it's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong, but time will tell. Eventually, a couple of years of control yet for Corbin Burns. So we'll see where the Brewers are with the Corbin Burns. All right, we'll switch gears over to Mr. Cody. He gets 3 items on his list as the president of baseball operations, general manager, whatever you want to title it. He is in charge, and Cody is making 3 things happen. Cody, the floor is yours, my friend.
So I'm going to kind of have to bounce off what Nick said and kind of agree on some things with, it'd be amazing to sign Willie Adames and see what they could get. But as everybody knows, the shortstop market, it's huge.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And next, as bad as this sounds, and I hate to say it because I'm a huge fan of Corbin Burns, but you got to put him on the trade block. See what prospects you can get from him, or even like in your last podcast, you said him trading him to Orioles to see what they can get with Urias or Holiday coming up. I mean, they got some stacked prospects there. So be sweet with what they could get and try to see if they can sign Woodruff to a few-year deal. But secondly, I would have to say, give Bryce Trang that chance at second base. Losing Wong now, it's that Bryce Trang, I mean, he's flying through the market. And 3, try to get a good middle reliever. See what else we can get in there. Because Devin Williams, I mean, to me, it seems like he might slot in that closing position. But it'll be interesting to see what they do this year.
I like that last one a lot because you guys have listened to the show, and people that have listened to the show already know I'm not sold at Devin Williams at closer. Now, I know he's great. I'm not taking anything away from him. Rookie of the year. He's a phenomenal pitcher, a phenomenal reliever. And maybe it was the mental hurdle with the Josh Hader trade a season ago or 6 months ago in the middle of the season when he just seemed to really grasp that closer position and he just struggled. Even the games that he closed, I mean, he labored through a lot of those. So I do really like that last one. I would have picked up a closer for the Milwaukee Brewers, if the very least as an insurance policy, if Devin Williams doesn't work out, but I'll digress on the offseason moves thus far because it's still the offseason. They got time. So while I have you, Cody, though, I'm curious, who is your current favorite player?
Rowdy Tellez.
That's the second one on this show.
That
has said that. The second
about
one.
The guy. He came into Milwaukee and he became, between him and Willie, they bring a huge spark. They're always joking. But yeah, Rowdy Tellez, he's my guy. I keep telling my wife, hey, my birthday's coming up. I need that Rowdy Tellez jersey. So we'll see what happens.
Levi, who was on this podcast for the first Fan Feature Friday, that was his. But he said he just liked him because he was big and bald, kind of like what he is. So I think he was more attracted to the looks of Rowdy Tellez. But the play is undeniable. He does bring the energy. And the Rowdy chants, I mean, are just electric. Have you ever been to a game where those, it's the bottom of the 8th inning, there's 2 on 2 outs or the 9th or whatever? They get loud, man. And you can feel it in there. He is a fan favorite. It's no denying that. All right, Nick, we'll switch over to you. You just became a fan recently-ish in 2008. in 2008, my favorite player was Ryan Braun. He still is my favorite all-time Brewer that, who I grew up with. So 2008 was mine, Ryan Braun. Who is your current favorite player, Nick?
I'm probably going to go with Corbin Burns just because, he kind of struggled in 2019, but ever since then you could make the case he's been the best pitcher in all of baseball for those last 2.5 seasons.
So let me ask you this from a fan perspective. What do you think it's going to take to keep Corbin Burns? Now, you said in your first wish, if you were GM, president, baseball operations, whatever, that you were going to pay him. Now, I've had this discussion, and Cody, we'll get your thoughts on it as well. I'm curious from your guys' perspective, because everybody always hears what I have to say. As a fan, you're watching the sport. Cody mentioned it with the shortstop market. And I mean, the starting pitching is right there with it. Rondon for 6 years. What was his 170, 165, I think, for Carlos Rondon to the Yankees. What do you really think it's going to cost to keep a Corbin Burns? I'm curious.
I'm going to think you start at least 6 or 7 years, and I'm going to probably start the price at 150 to 160, close to Rodon, maybe a little more since he's been healthier, more than Rodon has been in his career.
And that's kind of
but he's probably going to get more than that since he's younger too.
The Cy Young probably helps. He's younger. How you fit that contract in with 2 years left of control. I've asked the Connor Newcomb, who was the host of the Locked On Orioles, I asked him the same question, and he kind of just looked. He goes, I don't really know, because we haven't necessarily seen this situation play out in Major League Baseball recently, and with the contracts just evolving, it's hard to really gauge. But Cody, if you had to pinpoint a contract to look like for Corbin Burns, Nick. I mean, he did want to trade him, so I'm not sure if it's smart of us to ask him what he would pay him, but we're going to ask him anyway. Cody, if you had to guess what a contract looks for Corbin Burns, what are you thinking?
I think I think around probably 24 to 28 mil a year is what I'm thinking. And probably six, like Nick said, a 6 to 7 year term. I think anything more than 6 to 7 years, it's crazy.
And that's the thing with the fear for the small markets. You don't want to handicap the small markets with these deep contracts, but other than Carlos Correa, who's still got a 6-year deal off a questionable ankle, the years are just going up, and the money's obviously just going up. At some point, I made the prediction on the show, and I hope I'm wrong for me and Nick's sake, that I think before the season starts, you're going to see a trade. It would not shock me to see a trade for Corbin Burns. That 2 years of control is attractable to other teams, especially if you're a team like we talked to the Connor Newcomb from the host of the Locked On Orioles, for a team that may not want to pay him, but is in that window. And I don't think the Orioles are in that window, but there's going to be a team that thinks they're in the 1 or 2 year window that's going to attract a guy like Corbin Burns. So we'll see. Hopefully it plays out for the favor for all of us, in the Milwaukee Brewers' favor. So we'll see on all that. But that was definitely a lot of fun, because I literally, we were just getting ready to get the show started, and I said, how can I mix it up? I want to kind of have a little bit of fun. So that second segment there was certainly fun. And trust me, based off of the lists you guys thought, and you didn't have any time to prepare for those. I told you that right before we got on the show. You guys did pretty good. And if I could have it my way, you guys would be the next president of baseball operation or the GM. Next, though, I'm going to ask the guys what the current president of baseball operations, Matt Arnold, what they think about his job this offseason so far. The offseason for the Brewers has been interesting, to say the least. A new president of baseball operations, Matt Arnold, like I just said, a new catcher, new faces, lots has gone down, lots of trade. Wade Miley's back in Milwaukee after a 5-year absence. But Cody, I'll start with you and get your thoughts on where you think this Milwaukee Brewers team currently sits.
I think they sit good. It's going to be curious to see what they do in the Central. I think it's going to be a big battle between them and the Cardinals. With Cardinals losing Yachty, and then all of a sudden now they signed Contreras. But with the Brewers and what Matta didn't went out, and when they got Contreras, they got him for a steal, and that was a killer deal. I mean, that was a big piece that I think was missing for the Crew, and now Like everybody keeps talking about like third base is up for grabs, and he's making some good deals. We see what happens when the season starts.
I don't know if you've listened to it. I think it was like one of my first few episodes. We were recording live with Tim Dillard, and the trade came down, and my notifications were just going crazy. And they're like, the Brewers just traded. I think they're getting Contreras. And I'm like, there's no way. Like, and then it came out, but then they were like, we don't know what they gave up. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, please don't let it be Terrain. Don't let it be Weimer. Like, who's it going to be? Like, and then it came out to be Ruiz, and no offense to Ruiz, but if you would have told anybody that a straight up trade for Contreras to Ruiz, I mean, that's a one-sided trade in my opinion. So I agree there with you, Cody. Nick, I'll shoot it over to you. We have a lot of new faces coming up. Some pending contracts that are going to be due. Starting pitching looks to be as strong as it ever has been. Middle relief might be in question. Maybe the back end might be in question. We'll see how Devin Williams rebounds after some struggles last year. Hopefully Christian Yelich can get back on the path that he was once at. Nick, what are your thoughts so far on the new job of president of baseball operations, Matt Arnold, in his first offseason so far?
I think he's doing a good job. I've liked, obviously, the Contreras trade. I actually think the Winker trade could be one of the sleeper trades of the offseason. I like Colton Wong, don't get me wrong, but I think I agree with you. I think Jesse Winker is going to have a good year, and maybe he sticks around, maybe he doesn't, but I don't think he's going to hurt the Brewers anyway this year.
Yeah, I like the Winker trade. He mashes at American Family Field. He really does really well against all of the other National League Central teams throughout his course in Cincinnati. And if you could get a little bit of what you got in Cincinnati out of Jesse Winker, I think you're doing pretty good with that trade, because Colton Wong wasn't going to be a piece for your future anyway. You're getting a motivated, in my opinion, a hopefully motivated Jesse Winker, who's going to be due a contract following this year, who's an unrestricted free agent going into 2024. I got to ask you guys, though, because you're both Brewers fans, and I mentioned it on yesterday's podcast, and it pained me to say it. Have you paid attention to the Cubs offseason? Because it's been a quiet offseason as far as, Nick, I'll start with you. It's been a quiet offseason as far as like headlines, other than Swanson, but they've been pretty good. I'm getting a little concerned that the Cubs, I'm not saying the Cubs are better than the Brewers. I'm not saying that the Cubs are going to finish ahead of the Brewers, but they are more improved than they were a year ago. And they played the Brewers very tough last year too.
Yeah, I think Cubs are going to be better than they were last year, I think, because you got a lot of guys like Bellinger trying to prove something this year. So I think they're definitely going to be competitive again like they were last year. But yeah, I think it's still the Cardinals and Brewers for the top two spots in the division, at least for another year or two. Yeah,
the Cardinals are, I think Cody said it, the Cardinals are just, ooh boy, with Wilson Contreras in that lineup with Arenado and Goldschmidt. Cody, I'll finish with you. We'll end it with this. Am I crazy to say that the Cubs are I don't want to say they're worrying me. I don't want people to get the wrong impression here, but Tucker Barnhart, Drew Smyly, Jameson Taillon. I'm trying to go off the top of my head who else they got. Obviously, Cody Bellinger, Eric Hosmer, Dansby Swanson. Like these, they're not bad, man. And a lot of 1 to 2 year deals. So a lot of prove it deals, which ultimately motivates guys. You're going to see, probably a better year out of Eric Hosmer over there at first base playing at Wrigley Field. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, but I agree with you guys saying the Cardinals, but the Cubs, I wouldn't, scuff over. I think they're going to be good.
Yeah, it's the Cubs team. They're going to come up and they're going to come up flying. And I do agree that they are looking like a scary team. Once they signed Swanson, and it's crazy. And then they got Bellinger, like Nick said. I mean, he's looking for a bounce back year. They got him. They didn't get him cheap, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, they are looking scary now. I shouldn't say stealing Boxberger, but for
Boxberger's the other one I forgot. Yeah,
he's going over there. It'll be interesting. He knows what the crew can do, and it'll be interesting to see that pitching matchup. But yeah, they are a scary team, looking to be like a scary team.
Yeah, and well, if the Brewers play up to their potential, you got the starting pitching that is the best, one of the best in all of Major League Baseball, definitely the NL Central. It's the question that we've had for the last 2 years in Milwaukee is his offense. Can we freaking hit the ball, when we need to, number one, and consistently? And that's where you hope Contreras comes in. I agree with Nick. That's kind of where you hope you see Winker come in if he's healthy. I have higher expectations for Christian Yelich, even though he hasn't necessarily performed up to what his standards once were. I still have high expectations for him, but we all want the same thing. We all want a successful Milwaukee Brewers team. Guys, this was fun though. Thank you for joining me.
This is awesome. Thanks.
I hope you guys had enough fun, as much fun as I had. I shouldn't say as much fun, but I hope you had as much fun as you possibly could have had and being a part of the second ever Fan Feature Friday. So I will end it there, and I hope you guys have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys always for thank you, Nick. Thank you guys for always making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On Brewers podcast everywhere you get your podcast. We are on Twitter, we are on Facebook, we are on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Brandon_Snide. Thank you guys for making Locked On Brewers your very, very first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he is going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Coming up on my next episode of the Locked On Brewers podcast, I will be joined by Milwaukee Brewers reliever Peter Strzelecki. Do not miss out. We'll see what he's doing in the offseason. We'll see what he's got coming up for 2023 and what his expectations are for his Milwaukee Brewers. You do not want to miss it. Until next time, stay safe, stay warm, and as always, go Brewers.